So what I don't know is whether this is streaming or not. So what I'm going to try to do is, I'll put it on my phone and see what happens. Maybe I'll click this button. Now it says it's streaming. Anyway, we had a internet outage, and it's gone on for a while, and now probably no one's watching because everybody thinks that it wasn't happening today, even though I promised on Monday that it would be. So there it is. Here I am. Okay. Now I'm watching myself on a little bit of a delay, and it is streaming. Okay. Well, there we go. Okay. Well, it managed to get back online, and now I'm here, and I'm going to have an abbreviated session today, I guess, because it took like over an hour to get things working, and it probably would have been a simple fix. Yeah, hi. The internet went out last night, and then it didn't come back this morning, and we're trying all sorts of other things. And then the one thing that we didn't try, we did try, and it seems to be working. So, I'm discombobulated, and I left my coffee upstairs because I wasn't sure this was going to be working. And so here it is. So today, assuming I'm going to getting anything done at all, open the box of parts here. I've been working on the descent stage, the part that goes down and lands on the moon. And these are all these little parts, some of which are broken. And this one got cemented together, and I've been filing down the seams, and now I need to start at the top because the top seams are really messy as well. This is a little more challenging because some of the seams are inside these struts, and the struts are really delicate. I know they're delicate because I've broken one. And so anyway, I'm going to do my best to sand those down without breaking them. The other thing I need to do today is finish the ascent stage. Okay, and maybe I'll do that sooner than later. Okay, I don't have my stuff here. This is really kind of not quite smooth today, is it? Can't even find words. Words, what are they? Let's do a flip. Let's do a sear flip. Okay, well, there we go. Hi. It's going. It is really ragged today. Sorry, things got started really late because our internet was down for no particular reason. It just went out, I guess, late last night, and then we tried to get it going this morning and misdiagnosed the problem. Our new router kept showing like it wasn't working, and the modem kept showing like it was working. But it turned out that after wasting 2 hours playing around with the router and doing hotspots and all sorts of other things, that it turned out that the modem needed to be reset, which we probably could have just done like at 9:30 this morning, but it looked like it was working fine. So at least it's going. Well, I managed to use up almost an hour and a half of my time today without getting anything done. So I'm going to do today is I'm going to continue working on sanding down the seam of the descent stage. It gets a little rocket motor nozzle on the bottom eventually, and it comes down. And just the main body of it I have to clean up these seams without breaking these little hinges off. And then if there's still time, which there probably won't be, we have the rest of the little spindly legs for the lunar excursion module descent stage, and I might get around to doing those. The other thing I need to do is go over here. Be off screen for just a minute. You can look at this blank cardboard. It's pretty boring. I have the ascent stage of the lunar module, which is essentially complete, except for one detail, which is kind of a pain to fix. Anyway, it came out okay, I think. It came out okay. Even the windows are in place, and you can see the astronaut figure inside. But on the bottom here, this is, yeah, it's just that. I'm just reading your note here. I know. It's like, how did we become so dependent on this internet thing? I mean, I grew up without the internet for like 50 plus years. Oh, CodeM. Yeah. Having a CodeM is a difficult thing. Oh no. Okay. So you were having just really weird dreams about the old D&D characters that you had made up coming back. Well, we used to buy things. We actually did things. Well, we had TV. Okay. We wasted a huge amount of time watching television. I just busted that. We wasted a huge amount of time watching television. I guess we still do, except we don't call it television anymore. We call it streaming. Yeah, there was. People not only, sometimes that's what you need to do. Is if you have something in your life that's unfinished, sometimes you just, okay, that needs to be re-cemented on. This attitude control jet here is just barely hanging on. So this came out like mostly okay, except for that one attitude. Let me check the rest of these. Yeah, that one just needs to be cemented. I can do that. But down here, this is supposed to be where the rocket engine, it doesn't have a nozzle. I mean, they built this particular section without it. And so I want to paint that flat black. But this is, you need to, if it's going to keep you up all night, you need to finish it. So I want to paint this flat black, but it's a little challenging because I can't set this down. There's no way to set it down. There's no flat surface that doesn't have like an attitude control jet that will break off or something like that. So what I think is going to have to happen is I'm just going to have to hold it until the paint dries, because the only place to set it down is there. Wait a second. I just found something. I hadn't noticed this. I'd have to look. It is. Wow. Okay. Just saw something here. I'll show it to you. These tabs on either side here. You can kind of see them. They aren't real part of the lunar landing module. They don't exist on the real thing. Okay. What they are is part of the model that allows it to be attached to the top of the descent stage. And they protrude a little bit. Why am I getting these little scratches and stuff on here? These little flaws that didn't exist yesterday. Or not yesterday, but on Monday when I was working on this. try to fix that or not. Probably not. They extend a little bit beyond the black there. So are you running a group now? Are you running a campaign? Put something underneath it just to hold it up a little bit. Be able to, I might be able to set it down. They wanted to do part of the story, but the other DM wouldn't, probably because the other DM didn't think of the cool part of the story that was yours. Okay, I think I can do that because those little prongs extend beyond the bottom of the rocket nozzle thing that will become the rocket nozzle. If I set it up like this, it might be okay. I need to get a couple of things that I didn't prepare for because nothing was working. So I'm going to be back in just like 30 seconds. No, I didn't get my coffee. It's all the way upstairs. I got this thing here, the thing into which I will put the black paint. And then I'm going to use this big brush. I'm actually going to put a glove on because I don't know. This thing's painted metallic and it's already developing flaws. Thanks, who, though? I guess that says something about my incoherence today. Oh, stairs, yeah. You need, if you were to watch some previous episodes, especially some of the early ones, we will find out that Nines, the Tabaxi Bard, has trouble with stairs. In fact, we've had to do stairs checks. I don't know why. It was just a thing, right? It was like a strength check or something to see whether or not our characters could climb the stairs. And the Tabaxi Bard failed the check and had to be carried. And then it became a habit. Too bad you can't hear that. Let me see if I can get the rave effect going. There we go. Get the vortex thing going. So what was the part of the story you ended up not doing? Yeah, that does make sense, actually. So they turned on her and I had to start a second kingdom. Okay. I mean, that would have actually really been a pretty interesting turn of events. But I don't know. But your other DM, your co-DM, decided that wasn't something to do. It's too bad. Okay. I hope this doesn't end badly. I'm going to be painting the rocket nozzle thing on the bottom of this and hopefully not getting a mess everywhere. The way things are going today, there's a high likelihood of that happening. I need to take all of this out of the way and put it in a not safe place because every place here is not safe anymore. because this part, once it's painted, I want it way up out of the way. So were your players? Oh, okay. So your players. Oh, thank you. Yeah, I really need to go up and get the coffee so I can hydrate. So your players were protecting the original queen, not the coup leaders. This paint needs to be thinned as well. Okay, well, here's some hopefully relaxing painting and not making a huge mess. This needs to just be painted right up to the edge. And then not any further than that. Now I'm using this big brush, despite the fact that it could be dangerous on the edges. Trying to keep it nice and horizontal so that I can minimize brush marks on the bottom. I think what's going to happen today is that I will not be taking a break because I didn't get started till late because the internet wasn't working. But I'll probably end a little bit early because I will need to, take care of bodily functions or something. So if I have this right, okay. Well, oh, I'm glad you had a chance. I'm glad you waited to join in. I got started really late. In fact, I've just been going for just a few minutes because our internet was down for no particular reason other than it wanted to be, I guess. And so I didn't get started until just a little while ago when things started more or less working again. Oh, thank you. Yeah, let me show it to you after I turn it over. This is the painting this black because this supposedly is the base of the rocket on the ascent stage that carries the astronauts to the moon up back to the command module. But it's done, and it came out. I think it came out okay. The seams show a little bit in a few places, but I got them pretty well nailed. I got the antenna all attached. I was able to pull the tape off of the windows, so those are still there. And so it's hard to see with this glove on. Thank you, but I really appreciate it. Was your vacation good? I hope you had a really good one, because I'm about to go off on another one. Okay, another one of those I am leaving the scene kind of situations. So this is the last stream that will happen for like over 2 weeks, and I'll be back on, I think it's like the 16th of August. So the way this is supposed to work is that these I tested this, these little prongs extend beyond the base that's painted. And so I should be able to set this down on the prongs and not have the paint touch the cardboard. It looks to be working. So that's kind of a miracle. Anyway, I'll show off the LEM. There's the ascent stage. And the hatch on the top is missing. It fell into the box. I kept wondering why this hatch is not supposed to be cemented on, but it's because this attaches, once you can attach it to the top of the command module. when you simulate the moon landing. Okay, well I didn't destroy anything in the process. That was pretty cool. Um, there was a real opportunity there to make a mess of things. Oh, yeah, okay, that's understandable. Oh, okay, so you have a video you did a video of your trip. So I have a question, and we'll get back to Enforcer in a bit about what to do with the situation of the unfinished coup. But Ole, if I were to spend a day and a half in Copenhagen, if that were, because that's a possibility that might be coming up, what should I do? What should my wife and I do that just like the can't be missed things just for a day? And well, one thing Enforcer found is that you can't let it keep you up at night. So you need some sort of resolution to that, right? Are you running a DM session now? Can you introduce what you were doing in some variation into your current campaign? Is that a possibility? Because that would be kind of cool if you could take older your older ideas and use them now that you've got a good group together. You can't hear it, but if I'm looking a little bit disturbed, just because we have two dogs and they are running around just wild upstairs, and I hope it's okay. Okay. Well, whatever they're doing is safe. So here's the descent stage and all the parts that go with it. This one came out okay. I want to show this off. This is the standing on the moon astronaut, and I got the legs of the suit kind of dirty from the moon dust. At least that was the effect. I might need to put a little bit more on there. But I think it came out okay. Could you do it as a one shot, or is it just too long and complicated? No, it sounds like it'd be pretty long and complicated having a coup and counter coup going on. Well, one thing you could do, this is just a suggestion. I mean, in addition to, yeah, you probably need to run like several sessions that makes sense when it's something complicated like that. Um, is because you don't want to lose it. Okay, you put a lot of effort into it. I can tell that it would be what you might do is write it up. You know how when D&D you can basically buy campaigns, right? Which are sort of semi-scripted. But you can buy sort of semi-scripted campaigns, and maybe that's something you could do is script it and then save it as a campaign later. Is that a possibility for you? Where did my things are just really disorganized here today. It started out badly and it hasn't settled down. I'm looking for my 600 grit sandpaper, and I thought I had a pretty good piece of it. Oh, the planetarium. No, I wouldn't have thought of that. But that would be a lot of fun. I think I would enjoy that. Thank you for that suggestion. A Little Mermaid. Um, what about Tivoli? Is Tivoli too crowded to even bother with? Because that seems to be a thing that everybody does. Get the right sandpaper here. Yeah, very crowded, I imagine. So even during the week, like on a weekday, we might try it anyway. I mean, just to do it if we're there. No, that's really a shame to have all of that time and effort just end up not working very well. But I know I've got more of the 600 grit somewhere, but it all seems to have disappeared. Um, but if you took the time, or if you were feeling up to it, to actually turn it into um, like a story, a written story, I think 600. Okay, I was using it up. Yeah, I know. If something goes sad on you, you don't. Sometimes the last thing you want to do is spend a whole lot of time revisiting it. But if it's a scenario that you think would be fun to play, would be a really interesting gameplay, I would and you were invested in it. It might be interesting to take the time to write it up as if not an entire campaign, something that could be introduced into a campaign, or a campaign could be built around it. You know, I have to say I have a couple of things like that. Stuff I started and never quite finished, and because it wasn't finished and it looked like a lot of work, and there wasn't much interest in it outside of me, I just kind of put it aside. And that was, in some ways a little sad. And I keep thinking I might go back to it. Well, what are some options in terms of giving the players agency? I see what you're saying, though. You've got this coup going on, right? Which is all run by NPCs. Their NPCs are plotting a coup against other NPCs. How do you get the players involved? And you want them involved in a way that's decisive, right? You want them to be playing a really important and significant role in how this plays out. So, yeah, that's a really important thing. This this is an outstandingly bad thing. Just the amount of sanding that has to go into this to get it even. This part like way overlaps. The thing that attached to it, the flat part, extends beyond the edge of the main body, and it all needs to be sanded down. Otherwise, it's going to leave a really bad ridge. But I know that watching the sanding isn't all that much fun. If players play, could they be like recruited to be part of the guard? Could they, whereas mercenaries to defend, to take to defend the queen against the whom the coup is. Maybe they could, discover it. Mm-hmm. Okay. So I was just reading your note there. Well, yeah, I think that's a good idea. In thinking about it, if you're looking at a palace coup kind of situation, as far as your players are concerned, they shouldn't know right away that that's what's happening. They can play a role in discovering it, and maybe you can even have some red herrings, some false leads, and things. They could be they could be led astray by one of your NPCs. Is that a possibility? That they could just keep getting all sorts of weird and contradictory information from different NPCs as they started to investigate the what will end up being a coup attempt, but they could be investigating it, and getting all sorts of contradictory information and not knowing who's lying and who's telling the truth. That's even better, is that the more complicated it is, you don't want to overcomplicate it so it becomes unplayable. But the more the more they have to discover to find the truth, probably the better. And then maybe what they can do is, there might even be some combats. Mm-hmm. It makes sense. See that they would be investigating. They would fall in. They would just start finding all this weird stuff that didn't seem honest. Okay, something seems dishonest, right? And they're not really sure what. And a good deal of the gameplay could just be the investigative work and not knowing who to trust and who not to trust. At some point, things will break loose and they'll have to take sides. Maybe that could be a decision point. Is having to decide based maybe on incomplete information, but decide what side they're going to take on what was going on. You might have like one NPC that you as the DM wants to be trusted. Maybe kind of an innocuous player, kind of a merchant or a jester or somebody. Yeah. Well, I think that's the important thing, is to keep trying things out. And at some point you can, if you've got friends you could bounce it off of, or even, not this stream for a while, because I'm not going to be streaming for a while because I'm going to be away until the middle of August. Um, you can you can bounce those ideas off of maybe some of your friends to see which makes sense, and you don't have to take their word for it. They might like something that you don't like, or they might really like something that for you doesn't seem to fit the narrative, but it'll give you some idea of whether they seem to be interesting. That's the important part with a DM, being a DM in a campaign, is you want it to be interesting for the players and not real obvious. Make good gameplay. Okay. But yeah, I would suggest that you dust off dust off that campaign that you were working on, or at least that portion of it. Whoa, there's a big gap there that didn't close. That'll be a challenge. Um, okay. Well, I have to sand down inside of these struts somehow. So I'll figure out how to do that. So they still started finishing up that story that you've been with the co-DM. Yeah, and then you lost some of the players too, didn't you? But it sounds like a the complications and convolutions that you're describing, I think are really pretty cool. I'd really give it a try. See if you can make it work. This is going to be. I'm really pretty unhappy about how this part of the model is put together. Sorry, I have to pay attention to what I'm doing here, and it's not going that well. I have to get the sandpaper inside that strut. That's not a. Maybe you could take advantage of that. That the new player, maybe the new player can detect things or see things that the other players can't because being fresh to the situation, right? Being new to the situation. So the reason I'm really not happy about this is that this particular, these seams here inside the struts are really visible. This is where the legs attach, and so everybody's going to see that, and it's just not good. I might have to do something drastic and use a bigger grit, like a 400 or something, because it has to be. Mm-hmm. I mean, yeah, having a new player come in with a real different perspective on things. Maybe you could even arrange for that new player to, like little metagaming, know something or be aware of something that the other players aren't, as part of their backstory to bring that in to the story. Just a thought. Sometimes that can be done. Is to have a player have a backstory that they bring into the game to add a new dimension to it or a new direction. Just something to think about. And it isn't something that needs to go on. Yeah, something like that. Learned something from a fellow, somebody else in the jail, but just got a piece of information that sets everything else in motion. you know, and it doesn't have to be more than that, and it doesn't have to last long or affect most of the game after that. But it just to get things kind of rolling and get them started. Just a thought. But yeah, just somehow, you know, especially just coming into a game, why not come in because their experience is different, right? And maybe that's even how they get connected to the existing party is that, you know, they find something out. They find out, they discover something, get a piece of information, and they're trying to get someone to pay attention or at least be curious. And so maybe that's how, maybe that would help move the game along and explain how this person got in, you know, connected to your existing party. Just some random thoughts to, to that you might work out. I'm really getting dangerously close to just breaking something here. The coarser grit sandpaper is cutting into the plastic a lot faster, so at least that's good. That seems to be working. But it's just hard to reach in here. Sorry. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that could work. They stumble onto the party and then they move the story along in a different direction in a way that isn't really intrusive, okay, or weird or anything. Something that would kind of make sense. It's like, why are you here anyway? You know, why should we pay attention to you as a character? Well, it's because as a character, I am bringing you information that is important for the story to move along. Anyway, just some thoughts that you might consider. But I think it's good that you came up with something that you really enjoyed, and you might be able to revive it and include it. On this end, I'm just being horribly frustrated by the poor poor quality of the model. Not the poor quality of what I'm doing with the model, but the poor quality of how the model is molded. Quality control on their injection molding is really not good. It's very bad quality control. And if it weren't that these parts are so amazingly visible, you know, we probably wouldn't be messing with them so much, but they are. And they shouldn't have seams like this. This should have been like really easy to do. Okay, cement these two pieces together, give them a light sanding. Everything is perfect. Move on to priming and painting. Mm-hmm. But it's not. It's not as bad as some of the other parts, you know, where there are two halves of something that are a different size so they don't fit together. That happened. Even you can't get a finger in there to detect discontinuities. Well, it's better than it was. I don't know I really can't tell how well I got the seam there. I guess okay. I'm just going to continue working on the insides of these. I'll get the bigger parts later, but these are. Good luck having lunch. Thanks for joining in. Really appreciate it, and I hope you're able to get that campaign going. I'd like to hear more about it. So see you in like 3 weeks, right? I should be back then. Yeah, this all got started really late today because the internet wasn't working, and the troubleshooting didn't shoot the one thing that was causing the problem because it was the one thing that looked like it was working. Okay. So the modem had gone out last night, and it looked like it had come back on and it was working fine, but the error message was coming from the router. So I kept working on the router, even started using hotspots and things, trying to fix what it was. And it turned out that it was the modem after all. Like the butler did it, right? That's the kind of situation it was. Is that it turned out it was a modem anyway, even though that's the part that looked like it was working. So this whole thing was delayed. This whole stream today was delayed by over an hour. It's not. Anyway, some days are just like that. Usually it's a Monday, but today it was Wednesday. And what I'm doing here, and it looks like I'm not even on camera. Sorry about that. Tech Studio. So what I'm doing today is there's 3 parts to this, 2 plates attached to this thing in the middle. And the thing in the middle, well, let's just say that they don't line up. And so the seams are showing really badly. Like this edge here protrudes over the side of this, and in this case it's like a light. Really should hate to do that, but this is going so slowly. Yeah, I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna get a file and just take some of the. It's just protruding so much. That I am going to file it down a little bit. I really dislike using this because it leaves marks. I'm going to be here like for a month with the sandpaper, even with the coarser grit, at the rate this is going. Especially in the corners. So I guess I'm going to file this down and then sand it. Maybe have to sand it with a couple of different grits before it's done. The only good thing about this is that this is going to be mostly wrapped in gold foil, which the original lem actually was. It was wrapped in like gold mylar. Some of the scratch marks will be covered up. But just the sheer quantity, I'll call it, of this not being well done, not well constructed. is, yeah, it's quite an ordeal. I want the seams to not be showing as much as possible. Okay, well, there's that. Now I'll take this again, and then I'll take even finer grit after that. Yeah, okay, so the stream got started late, internet not working, not troubleshooting the right trouble. Finally got it started, and it's not the most interesting thing in the world watching someone sand down these seams, these unseemly seams. I know that. I'll acknowledge that. It's just that it just needs to be done. You know, it's just a model that is not well made. I thought I had gotten this side down pretty well, but still protruding. In this particular case, there's actually a gap there that will need to be filled in. Well, the filing isn't it leaves marks, but they can be sanded out like I'm doing it here. But it did remove plastic quickly enough so that I might be able to get this section done sometime, this decade, yeah. I'm going to sand down all of the sides of this at some point. Try to keep the texture looking the same. This is the opposite direction. The top of it is like below the level of the thing of the main body. So the plastic has to come off of the other part. Okay, well, it was good to have somebody in chat. We talked about DMing a scenario that they came up with some time ago that never had a chance to play out. And that happens, sometimes you just get too much drama among the players. I don't know what happens. The focus might be, maybe the focus isn't on what they're doing as much as themselves. Maybe it doesn't have anything to do with the game at all. Maybe there are just some issues that arise independently of the game. When that happens, that's too bad, because the game itself can be a lot of fun. But that seemed to happen in this case, so we were chatting about that, and that was interesting. It's good to be able to do that, because Dice and Dungeons is first and foremost a Dungeons and Dragons show. And if you haven't already, it would be really good if you had a chance to catch it with the live chat on Twitch Sundays at about 2, or you can catch the old episodes on YouTube or as a podcast. Either way, they're pretty amazing, not to be missed. I'm saying that sincerely. And this stream is a spin-off. I was talking about that. Spin-offs on TV spin-offs. Well, this is a streaming spin-off of the Dungeons and Dragons show, because it was created. It wasn't created. We were painting the dungeon tiles that we use on our show, and our DM said, "Why don't you stream that?" And I said, "Why?" And she said, "Because I'm the DM, that's why." And so that started, and you're seeing me working on this Apollo model because I don't have any dungeon tiles or minifigs to work on right now. And anyway, it's a cool model and kind of fun for me to build. No, it's not fun. It's very frustrating, actually, to build, because of having to do things like spend a lot of time doing this sanding to fix the ill-fitting parts, because the parts are ill-fitting. And so this sanding is trying to make the seams that are really obvious be less obvious. They're not going to go away completely. It's pretty clear that that's not going to happen here. But what I'm hoping for is, at least, if they show a little bit, that they will just show a little bit and look, as I said before, with some of them, look more like maybe a welding line, a line that was welded, as opposed to pieces of plastic that simply did not fit together the way they were supposed to. That's the intent, anyway. So that's what I'm doing here, is doing sanding and filing on the descent stage, the part with the rocket engine that lands on the moon, as opposed to the ascent stage. The ascent stage is over there and is mostly done. This is going to be very much a contrast to it. That says painted that dark metallic color. This is going to be painted gold and wrapped in gold mylar foil, because the original lem actually was. It was gold. So, it'll be that dark metallic against gold metallic. It'll be kind of an interesting contrast. In the meantime, these ill-fitting parts are being gouged at with files and sandpaper, trying to make them less ill-fitting. I'm trying to pick up a piece of sandpaper. It shows you how well my fingers are working today. So I get to wrap the sandpaper around the popsicle stick so I can get it in there and sand away at it. This one's not too bad. This is actually kind of coming along okay. Probably some sort of little power tool that would do this really quickly that I don't know exists. So yeah, this whole thing is about Dungeons and Dragons, and this started out as streaming the painting of the dungeon tiles and our minifigs that are used in the show that you need to watch because you should. It's just really a good D&D show, so that's why you should watch it. But in the absence of any of those needing to be done for the show, there is the preparation of these pieces. The descent stage. Wish I could say decent stage, but it's not decent at all. It's really, really pretty annoying. Yeah, and then there's gaps in there. There's like where the tab fit there that needs to be filled in because that's going to look really bad, even though it's under the platform where it won't be seen very much. That's where the platform with the ladder goes. It's what those little holes are for. There it is. After I'm done sanding this, I'll get some filler out and go around the edges and fill in these gaps and try to, as much as I can. Okay, well, I got the small plates done. Now I can do the bigger parts. Yep. Kind of regretting that I left my coffee upstairs and didn't bring it down because I didn't know that this was actually going to start working because nothing was working all morning. So I didn't bring the coffee down because I didn't expect that I would get things working, and then they were working, and it was like, well, if they're working, I better work too. So here I am, kind of fading away. Maybe, I don't know, maybe after I'm done with this side here, these sides, after I'm see if one side is higher than the other, then that would be fixed by sanding, or whether there's actually just sort of a gap there. Sort of looking like there's just sort of a gap here. I'll sand it a little bit further and then I'll fill it in. This is going to be one of those things that's going to be sanded and then filled and then sanded and then primed. And then after it's primed, probably would have to be, there'll be more filling and sanding because sometimes the flaws really show up when there's paint on it. That's as good as that's going to get. So the only thing not really frustrating about this is that at least I have a place to hold it. I mean, I can hold this if I'm fairly careful without breaking off those little struts, which is not a good thing, since these little struts are half of what holds this whole thing up off the ground. Came unprepared. I'm not prepared with anything to monologue about today because of just the way the day started. It was like, really, how can the internet not be working? And then this should have fixed it, and this should have fixed it, and this says this is working, but it's not working. And yeah. So it was almost like this thing we had with our furnace once. I'll tell this story because it's just how things go. You just go, what the heck? So we'd had a power outage and things came back, but the furnace didn't. We knew there was a problem because the thermostat wasn't. There was no power to the thermostat. The whole thing had gone dead. The thermostat had gone dead. Well, I shouldn't say the furnace wasn't working. We didn't know that. What we knew is that the display on the thermostat was gone. It just wasn't showing anything. And we kind of took it apart a little bit and got our tests. We have some equipment, primitive equipment, one can test to see whether or not there is any power or not, right? And the thermostat just wasn't working. So we thought, well, I guess what we need to do is get a new thermostat. Because that was the thing that was obviously not working. And so one starts with the obvious thing. So we figured, okay, well, we'll call the heating and cooling folks. We'll charge you $110 to come out and see what the problem is, kind of people, because we couldn't get anywhere with it. Okay, just whatever we tried, no power, no response, nothing from this thermostat. So we called up and said, we got a busted thermostat. Well, the technician comes out and says, yep, there is no power to your thermostat. It's just not working. And the power to the thermostat, I said, well, maybe your thermostat's not broken, just maybe, there's no power going to it. So we can put a new one in, but then there wouldn't be any power going to the new one. So we have to track down why there isn't any electricity flowing to your thermostat. And the electricity flows through this very complicated set of sensors and relays and switches and stuff inside the furnace. So we got, I thought, okay, well, if there's no power going to it, then I suppose we should find out why not. And then it turned out that there was no power going to the furnace. So, of course, there wasn't any power going to the thermostat because the thing that powers the thermostat didn't have any electricity going to it. Well, that was kind of baffling because, we checked the circuit breaker and the circuit breaker was fine. We even flipped it off and flipped it back on and still no power. So it was, maybe, do we need to call an electrician now instead of the furnace guy? Because the problem isn't, it might be in the furnace, but how would we know? Because the furnace has no power going to it. And it's not, the circuit breaker isn't the problem. Maybe the circuit breaker is the problem. Maybe the circuit breaker is broken. That's not a good thing, right? So we're getting all ready to just give up on it. And it's like, well, let's follow the circuit, right? And so we basically followed the wires from the breaker box to the furnace, and saw that there was a switch. Okay, and the switch was on, but there was no power going to the switch. And then the electrical line, the wires went from the switch to this ground fault outlet. It's like, okay, well, the switch to the furnace makes sense, so you can turn it off and on. But it went through this ground fault outlet and tested it, and there was no electricity going to the ground fault outlet. So again, making us think that there was a problem way upstream, like in the circuit breaker. Well, it was like, well, I don't know, let's try this, and push the little test button on the GFCI outlet and reset it, and just like magic, poof, everything came on. We were just looking at it and going, that's about, and it was. You could say, well, that would be the last thing I would check. Well, it was the last thing we checked. We were checking everything all along, everywhere. And it turned out that the problem was that the ground fault had tripped when the power came back on. And then everything had just stopped there. And we didn't know. It was like, why does the power go through GFCI before it goes to the furnace? It's already a circuit breaker. And then I remembered that the furnace before this had a fuse. In addition to the circuit breaker, there was a fuse breaker, kind of like a suspenders and belt situation where there were two levels of protection for the furnace. And when that was replaced, the fuses were replaced, but they were replaced with something a little more modern, the GFCI outlet. And that's how the GFCI outlet came to be in place. But it just had, we were all stumped. That's just the word I'll use. It's like, how could there not be power going to where it should be going? And it was just that. And it turned out that the whole thing, just pushing two buttons, the test button and the reset button, the furnace came back on, the thermostat lit up, everything was fixed, just like that. So why did I start telling that story? Well, it's because fixing the internet today was like that. It was like checking all the settings on the computers, booting and rebooting. The computer that runs this, I did it like 3 times. Nothing was really working. I tried hotspotting it off of my phone. The computer said it was hotspotted, but Twitch wouldn't acknowledge it. The router just had this error signal on it. So it was like, the router's not working. And the modem light said, well, I'm working. I'm not the problem because my light's green. But it turned out that it was in fact the modem, and it was lying to us. That it thought it was okay. Oh, okay. I am a modem and I am working just fine. But so it was kind of like flipping the reset button on the ground fault outlet fixed the furnace, and the thermostat, and it was, well, let's reset the modem, even though the modem says it was working okay. It kept saying, I'm just fine. No, I'm not the problem. Don't look at me like that. I'm not it. Well, we reset it, and after it was reset, everything was working. But it was another one of those, well, it took 2 hours. It took 2 hours to find the culprit. The culprit turned out to be the one pleading its innocence. Yeah. So that's why I told the story about the furnace. Well, there's 2 reasons why I told the story about the furnace and the thermostat. One reason was because it was very much the same. Doing an intense troubleshooting thing that took hours before checking the one thing that didn't make sense. Okay. So just spending hours and hours trying to troubleshoot something, and then it turns out to be something nobody didn't even know it was part of the circuit. It's like the modem can't be the problem because the modem says it's not the problem. Why would a modem lie to us, right? Well, but that was one reason why I'm telling this story. The other reason I'm telling this story is to fill some of the time because, the music still isn't playing and I didn't have anything else to talk about. So you got to hear the story of the furnace and the thermostat. Well, this is starting to get done. This one actually worked out pretty well. A couple of these are not looking too bad. I am getting a cramp in my hand, though. That's not good. I'm not enjoying that. After I go around this and check, make sure I've got all the sides. Then I'm going to sand all the facets here with 800 grit sandpaper just to sort of polish them, give them a uniform texture. Then I'm going to apply filler to some of these seams, actually most of these seams. And sometimes the filler does an okay job and sometimes it just doesn't. But I'm going to give it a go anyway. Got a lot of dust here. That is for sure. Got a lot of used sandpaper bits. This is the one I want. Hi. This is a day of size. Not like in how big is its size, but just need to sigh. Needed to sigh on Monday too. Part of it is just being older. I think I'm just going to say this. I think that a sigh like that is kind of like a yawn. It rebalances the carbon dioxide in the bloodstream. That's my story. Sticking with it. I'm sticking with this story. whether it's true or not. It is what I'm saying, and I'm sticking to it. Every time it makes that little dinky sound, you hear a little dinky sound, that is my finger trying to break these struts off. Why? Because it just is. It just seems to be what my finger wants to do. Because by breaking off struts like that, it would be a minor disaster. So why not? The thing about this is that I don't remember which one I did first. And the difference between the polished sanded surface and the not polished sanded surface is virtually, I can't tell. So I don't know. I'm probably going to be doing a couple of these pieces twice because I already did it, but who can remember? All right. Great. Inhale sanding dust. That was good. That was a good use of inhaling. To wear eye and face protection using this. So I have eye protection, kind of. They're not, but I guess I didn't protect my face well enough. What was this doing? Paint is almost but not quite dry. Put some black paint on that earlier, so I'll show that off later. Yeah, this doesn't look like much. It isn't right now. But this is the descent stage of the lunar excursion module. The rocket nozzle goes in here, and it comes down, and the part that's off screen over there, that is the ascent stage, sits here on top of this. So when it lands, the whole thing lands, and then the other part takes off, and this stays behind. And this is supported by all spindly little spidery legs made up of a number of very delicate little bits and pieces that are in this box that I'm going to bring over here, because those need to be cleaned up also. These struts took the better part of an entire stream because they're injection molded, and there was along the two sides of the two halves of the injection of the mold, they didn't fit together very well, which means that there was a bunch of flashing left on the pieces. And not only that, some of them, the two halves of the mold, weren't registered. So if it was like this, it ended up like that, where one end and the other were like out, and they had to be filed down. So the piece ended up being smaller and more fragile. But each of the landing gear are made up of these triangular things up here that are right now attached to and molded onto the descent stage. And then one of each of these four things, and they're supposed to fold up and unfold. And there's tiny little bits of pins that are supposed to fit into little holes. And there's three-way right on this thing. This really thin plastic here are like a three-way hinge. It's really complicated, and I'm not sure the real thing was complicated. I'm not sure how it's going to work with this plastic model, but that's what I'm trying to do, is get those parts prepared so that I can at least start test fitting it. So these are still attached to the trees at 3 different points, and that needs to come off, and then the little excess plastic where they were attached needs to come off, and then there's just seams showing everywhere, like on the back of here. You can almost see it. If it focused, you can see that there's a seam there, a raised part where the two halves of the mold didn't come together, leaving an unsightly blob of plastic. And anyway, it's just the way it is. These plastic kits are not always that well constructed. I have this little saw, and I'm using this to remove them from the tree instead of an X-Acto knife, because I don't want them to break off. It is broken enough. I don't want it to break off and leave an indentation that should then be filled in. So with the saw, I can control where it breaks. At least that's the intent of it. And the less misshapen they are, the better. That one didn't break off really well. The ones in the box had broken off in the box. Okay, they just broke off. Yeah, but you can see right along the edges of each of these little flashing, basically, is what it is, a ridge, which is not supposed to be on the strut. This makes no sense at all. These things are like double attached right in the center there, where it's not easy at all to get the excess plastic out. Yeah, so even cutting these off the sprue is turning out to be a unnecessarily challenging task. It's not possible to get the saw in there, because it comes to a point. So the design of this is just not good. The design of the injection molding. So that'll be a little bit of a work to clean that up. This model is creating many opportunities for going, really? So sometimes it's not just a sigh of trying to get rid of excess carbon dioxide. Sometimes it's just like, I can't believe this is so poorly done. Like here, I mean, this is so obvious. You can actually really clearly see it. Is that, see how this is? See how this is? How much thicker this is than the other one? And it's not, I mean, it's not even just like a thin little bit of flashing. It's like a big chunk of excess plastic. This one is just a thin little bit of, I don't know. they're just not good. Just not well done. So yeah, I mean, you got these tiny little pieces. At a distance, you really can't see that there's a problem, but up close, I can see that there's just major issues with excess plastic in many places that will be actually fairly difficult to clean off. That justifies a not just a sigh, but a grunt, like a really they couldn't do any better. Precision molded plastic parts. There's Inigo Montoya once said, I do not think that word means what you think it does. In this case, the definition of precision, they got part of it right. They are plastic parts and they are molded. So 3 out of the 4 words, I think, were accurate. Molded plastic parts. It's the adjective part, the precision, that is not true. There, now I've got 4 misshapen parts that I can now go at with sandpaper and maybe even a file. I mean, these might be bad enough that they require filing. I'm not sure. I prefer not to. I prefer not to use the file on them. Well, I'll just grab one and start, right? So I see bits of plastic that shouldn't be there, like on the edge of this round thing, right? Um, there shouldn't be flashing showing on that. This would be a lot faster if I used the file. But boy, I don't know. Sometimes the file just cuts so fast and then leaves scars. So I'll apologize to all of you in advance by saying I decided to use the sandpaper because it's just, I think, safer, although it's much slower. These parts are even more, I need to get them cleaned up even more so because they are painted metallic gold, and just the flaws will just become really obvious really quickly when it's painted with a glossy metallic color like that. Anywhere close to being cleaned up yet. The other thing I have to be careful of is these parts are really fragile. They do break easily. I know because I've broken 2 already in the process of prepping them. It's not just sanding away at it, but it's also backing it up, putting some pressure on it so it doesn't snap off. That deserves another really. It's sound of I can't believe that I have to be spending all this time cleaning up these parts like this. So just as a reminder, I'm going to be away. I will not be back Friday. I'll not be back until I think 9th, 12th is a Monday. That Wednesday, August 14th, which is like 3 weeks from now. It's a long time. But I'm not abandoning this stream, the relaxing painting, or as it has become, relaxing, not very relaxing, sanding with Dyson Dungeons will return. And then we'll go away again, and then we'll return again, and then we'll go away again, and I'll return again. I know things are kind of inconsistent with this particular thing, and because there's just things come up, usually having to do with being retired and traveling. So there's that. Sometimes it's dog watching. A couple of weeks ago, it was babysitting. At a certain age is a little bit challenging, no matter how delightful the child. Children just move faster than retired people. I can say that for sure. Without a doubt, this child moved more quickly than I did. So that the thing I had going for me was that I have more experience, and so I could anticipate and get out ahead of the child. They weren't quite clever enough, I'll wait another year or two. I really, really should go get my coffee. I'm starting to fade even more than usual here. Got another hour to go. So I said I wouldn't be taking a break. So I'm going to say this isn't an official break. This is kind of a mission of self-mercy. Okay. It's I need to get some sort of liquid, and preferably one with a little caffeine in it. And after I finish this part, and I'm getting closer, it's getting closer to being done, I am going to not take a break. I'm going to take a life-saving mission. Go up the stairs and get the cup of coffee that probably is cold by now, but who cares anymore? I can microwave it quickly. Zap it, and it'll be warm enough. And at this point, I'm not too concerned about whether it tastes really fresh or not. It's just be what it will be. I need to remember to do the insides of these struts. I did the outsides. The insides have the same issue of flashing, showing a ridge, creating a ridge on the the I can't reach it ridge of ugliness. Fortunately, it seems that the ridge sands off pretty quickly. Because I started late, because the internet wasn't working, I said I wasn't going to take a break, and I'm not. It's not an official break. Usually, when I take a break, I say I'll be back in 20 minutes, and then 35 minutes later, I'm back. It's become, it's just become kind of like a running gag. It's, oh yeah, we'll be back in 20 minutes, except it's 35. Well, in this case, I am going to be. I am going to be really quick about it, because I did get the stream started, and I'm making some progress here. I mean, things are getting sanded. Well, tediously, but nonetheless. So there's one of the four of these cross braces that now looks tolerable. I'll put it up in the box. This is the box of parts there. It's in the box of parts. And I'm not going to put the I'll be right back thing on. I'm not going to push that button. I'm just going to let you stare at this. Um, just stare at this while I'm gone for a few minutes, and then I'll be right back. Okay, be just like 5 minutes probably. Almost back. Need to clear out a space for that coffee cup. Okay. Well, here I am again. And now I've got a mug of coffee, an official branded Dice and Dungeons mug. Okay. Which you can't see from this angle. Not really well. And if I start drinking it now, I'll probably wake up just about the time that this stream ends. I got one of these done. I need to fix one thing on the ascent stage. One of the attitude control jets, the little nozzles, is not attached. I'm going to do another one of these, and then I'll go back to that and fix that before I forget about it. Great. I've got a big sneeze coming. You have to excuse me. I'm getting sanding dust, I guess. Why not? These bits, these cross brace bits, are one of five distinct pieces of these spidery struts. Those spidery legs that support the entire lunar module. And in real life, they're made out of like some sort of alloy of aluminum or titanium or something. I'm guessing something that is strong, and not little bits of plastic. So I am skeptical. I'm skeptical about the ability of these little plastic struts to not only fold and unfold, but actually even support the weight of the lunar module. There'll be no way of knowing for sure until I assemble it, right? And it's quite a ways. That's quite a ways down the road, because they have to be prepped, like I'm prepping now, getting rid of the flashing on them, handing out some of the imperfections, and that kind of stuff. So that, as you can see, it's sort of tedious and takes longer than one would like. I know it's taking longer than I would like, and since you're watching this, I know that I can say that because only somebody who is watching this would actually hear me say, because you're watching this. If you weren't watching this, then you wouldn't hear me say that. I mean, maybe listening to it as a podcast. I don't think this is podcasted. That doesn't make any sense. But you might be watching it on YouTube. Anyway, if you're watching it, you can see that it's really kind of tedious and not terribly interesting. And rubbing sandpaper on tiny little bits of plastic and hearing some old guy complain about having to do this at all. Like if these parts were if they were precision molded plastic parts, and that first word was actually true, the precision word, I wouldn't have to be doing any of this. I'd be giving them a dusting off and I'd be priming and painting and assembling. But no, that doesn't happen. Nope, it doesn't, because they are molded plastic parts, and the precision part was somehow just left behind in the process. But it just is that at this time in the stream, almost always it starts feeling chillier down here, and I start sniffling a little bit. It's almost as predictable as curmudgeonly grumping about something. This has shown up on all of the models, all two of them that I worked on so far. I don't remember it showing up when I was a kid. Never really paid attention to it, but there's these little circles, sometimes big circles, that have nothing to do with anything. Now, they're just a circle that shows up on the surface of the model. And I know that it was part of the mold, but there's no reason for it other than to be annoying, as far as I can tell. And they mar the surface. If they're a raised circle, they have to be sanded off. If they're an indented circle, sometimes I've had a little success in filling them in. Sometimes they're really so shallow that filler doesn't hold, but they're unsightly. Here, so the protuberances of plastic that should come off fairly quickly. So tempted to use a file. And I just mind, because they're hard to reach with the sandpaper. Needle file, just to take off this bit of plastic that is protruding, that is actually fairly hard to reach. And doesn't abrade easily. I'm not sure what's going on with that. Then I'll just polish it with this, try to get out the scratch marks that might be still lingering there. This one's a mess. This has got, you can see it there. This bit of plastic there, you can see it's not there, right? It is here. That shouldn't be there at all. And that's so thick that I am going to have to file that in order to get rid of it. I have to do that quite carefully, because I don't want to break the part. Using this file very slowly and carefully. Slowly anyway, hopefully carefully. When I'm done with this one, before I start the third one, I am going to go back to the ascent stage of the lunar module to show it to you, but also I have to fix one of the little tiny rocket nozzles that are the attitude control jets. You'll see those. You'll see what I'm talking about when I put this aside and bring that out. to get some contact cement out and reattach it. It's sort of dangling. So it's attached, but it's not solid. It's the kind of thing that could easily fall off. And if it fell off, it would be impossible to find. It's really small and colored this. It's dark. Okay. It's a dark color and it's small. Yeah, getting this out. There's another one that's sort of like this, but the plastic's not quite as thick. Sorry, I went quiet there. I'm just trying to get this done. It's not the most cooperative thing in the world. I'm just going to say this is a major flaw in the manufacturing process. This lump of plastic right here is just something that should not be. It'll be too. I don't want to. I don't want to overdo it. Okay, I don't want to break something. I think I'm just going to stop there rather than take too much of a chance. There's something going on upstairs. Probably grocery delivery. So I guess. Yeah, chatting and movement and all sorts of stuff going on. We get these struts on the inside, and then I will declare this one as good as it gets. And then I'm going to bring out the ascent stage and show that off a little bit because it came out, and it looks pretty decent. It came out okay after a lot of shaping and whining and complaining and everything else. But it's got a part that's, like I said, one of the little attitude control jet nozzles is just sort of dangling. It almost fell off when I brought it out earlier in the stream to paint the bottom. So I want to make sure that I fix that. Otherwise, one of these days I'll be showing it off, like not showing it off, but showing it. Showing it off means like, oh, I'm so proud of this, I'm going to show it off. No, I'll just be showing it because somebody will want to see it. And then I'll notice that little part is missing and it'll be, oh, where did it go? There's no way to replace it. The whole thing is ruined. That kind of excess drama that I'm not going to engage in. Okay. go over this one more time. I think it's, it's mostly okay. I probably before I paint these, or maybe after I paint them, put the primer on, I'll check them again. And if I see obvious flaws, then I'll sand it down and maybe have to reprime them. But it looks like it's pretty much okay. So there's two. And then I'm going to move all these little bits out of the way, clean this up a little. And what I will need now is to have things fall on the floor. You need a toothpick. The contact cement and a piece of paper, and I can just use just a piece of paper. I'm going to tear it off with a corner of something down here. Whatever it is now missing a little corner. Here is the ascent stage. I think it came out okay. The seams don't show too much. The windows are there. The little astronaut figure is visible. The antennas are attached. These things are supposed to be attached. They're a little bit spongy on there. But they're not falling off. Some of them are really solid and some are definitely not. This one is the one that is really, it's just not attached. So I'm just going to take that off and reattach it. Probably didn't have enough contact cement on it. This tiny little blob of it. But I wanted to make sure that didn't fall off sometime and disappear. To get a tiny little dot of this contact cement to adhere to that tiny little spot there. Like way too much there. It is adhering. I'm going to try to push it into place. And after a few, like 30 seconds or so, after that sets up just a little bit, they should stick to each other. I succeeded in doing earlier is I painted the bottom of that flat black. Where do these? Does this stuff keep coming from? It's just like sticky, weird. Put this on and then clean that off. So this just goes here like that. It's helping pretty well. The metallic just shows every little bit of dust. I just want to, before I set this aside, make sure it's lined up. Okay. Now, put this back on because it keeps falling off. I am going to put this back in its storage box so that it is mostly safe from breaking. Okay, so I'm going to just set this in its storage box over to the side here. If it's not near me, the odds of breaking it are smaller. I reduce the odds of breaking it by getting it away from me. Got half an hour left. Let me move on to the next one here. I want to, what I should do, I'm going to do this real quick. Okay. Mine, you can't hear the noise, it's filtered out. I almost dropped these in the box of parts, which would have been bad because then it could have broken some of the parts. Why am I showing this to you? I'm showing this to you because these are some of the dungeon tiles that were painted on this stream back in the day, way back in the day, when we were doing dungeon tiles for our Dungeons and Dragons show. These are printed on the 3D printers behind me. Each one is printed, and it's really cool how it does that. It's able to print these vertically so that the walls are attached to the floor as a single piece so they don't break off, which is nice. Some of the early versions did. The wall and the floor were separate. We epoxied them together, and sometimes they didn't line up, and sometimes they broke off. They were fragile. But now our DM improved the entire printing process and put them together like this. And then these are printed black. They're primed and then base coated in brown and then washed with a kind of reddish brown wash to bring out the wood grain that's built into the print. Okay. So primed, base coated, washed, and then the stucco is painted, hand painted in to fill it in front and back. And so that's what people would have seen early on in this stream when I was doing dungeon tiles. There were also ones that looked like stone. The wood ones are the prettiest. And the cool thing about that is under these plates are ball magnets in the corners, and the ball magnet grip onto itself. See that? This is just cardboard. There's no special base or anything. These stick to themselves, and as you can see, they come apart and rearrange and hold on, and they're just amazing. So it allows for the reconstruction and construction of endless variety of, in this case, warehouses or taverns or manor houses. There's even cool features like doors, pivot hinge doors that open. Again, we'd paint these with the base coat, the primer and the base coat and the wash, and then paint the detail of the doorknob and the hinges, front and back. Okay. So that's wow. Yeah. Did a pretty good job painting this, I have to say. I'm just looking at it. Anyway, yeah. So Dungeons and Dragons, dungeon tiles. That's how Dice and Dungeons started this stream. So I wanted to put a plug in for that, just to do it. Now, having done that, I need to go back to cleaning up poorly molded, imprecision molded plastic parts. Struts that hold up. I'll show you the instructions a little bit, mate. later so you can see what I'm working on. It might make sense actually, so you can see what this is all about and why the parts are important. Yeah, this one is a little more of a challenge. There's plastic built up in the center here. That's all I'm doing today is sighing. This has been a real sighing sort of day because it started out so, it just started out with the internet not working and the troubleshooting, shooting in the wrong spots until we found out what was wrong. It's kind of like, well, this says it's not working, but it appears to be working, and this says it's working, but who can tell? Eventually, Alexis, who was our DM, just said, well, I don't know. I can't think of anything else. I'm just going to reset it all. Just reset the modem, even though the modem was happily telling us that it was just fine. I'm not the problem. Don't look at me. It turned out that resetting the modem that was protesting its innocence is what eventually fixed all of this, but it was just like an hour and a half of almost 2 hours of frustration, and that's why this whole stream started so late because it wasn't working, and then it was working, and it was like, should I even bother? But it was okay. I'll bother. I needed to get some things. I needed to make some progress, and also let everybody know that I'll be gone for almost 3 weeks. I'll be back on August. I believe it is August 14th, 16th, 14th. 14th, August 14th, that when a Wednesday, I'll be back on a Wednesday, where I'll be picking up where I'm leaving off today, which is trying to get parts to work. So I'll be doing some more sanding. You get that to look forward to that. When I get back, I'll be doing more sanding of little struts like this. And then once that's done to a level of adequacy, I will be test fitting them, because I don't know. I just don't believe that the hinge system mechanism is going to work very well. I'm going to do a little bit of test fitting just to make sure that the instructions aren't lying about how this is supposed to work. And then off screen, I will prime them, and then I'll check them again for flaws, to see how flawed they are, and if necessary, do some more sanding. And then, if they don't require too much work, I'll paint them. They get painted gold, and then assemble them. And if the instructions didn't lie, and these parts actually do snap together and fold and unfold just the way they're supposed to, there isn't terribly much cementing that needs to be done. Okay, so the assembly should be, I can't promise this because it never turns out the way it should be, ever. The assembly should be quick. And then after this is done, that is to say, after the descent stage of the lunar module is finished, then I've got the command module. And the command module presents its own challenges, mainly because of the interior. The interior there should be really a lot of detail, because you can kind of see the interior. The hatch opens, so you can see the astronauts sitting in there. They're in little uncomfortable couches. Yeah, so the hatch opens and there's some windows that need to be cut out and glued on. I wonder, yeah, I'll be doing some test fitting on that with the lunar module, the ascent stage. There's these triangular windows, and the template that came with the model. Let me just say that the template that came with the model did not match reality. Okay, the shape of the windows on the template, the shape of the template was not the shape of the window openings. They're both triangular, could say that, okay, but the window openings were like a scalene triangle, and the template was like an isosceles triangle. The template had sides that were even, and the window openings didn't. So that was one challenge. The other was that they needed to be installed before the two halves were glued together, before the front and the half were glued together. And then they needed to be carefully masked so that after the painting wasn't done until the halves were glued together. So installing the windows was very, I found very difficult. There wasn't any clearance. The adhesion points were minimal. It just presented a lot of challenge just to get the windows attached. And then they had to be masked, and then they needed to not be knocked in. They needed to not be detached when the masking came off. And that all happened. There's a flaw in one of the windows. I probably should have replaced it. I probably should have taken out before I did the assembly, before I put the two halves together and painted and all of that. I probably should have replaced it with one that didn't have a little on it. But at that point, it was no. I just need to get on with this. And so there's a little bit of a scar on it, which from most viewing angles isn't visible. You have to like pick it up and rotate it in an unusual way in order to see it. And I'll just say it's moon dust or something like that. Anyway, the ascent stage is done, and it looks okay. It's a B minus kind of thing. I've noticed that there's flaws in it that maybe could have been corrected if I caught them earlier, or if I'd taken more time with it. But I think it looks, certainly under normal display conditions, which is a minimum of 18 inches under somewhat indirect lighting, it'll look okay. All right. I've got one more of these. Give that a sanding. I should do some gap filling on the body of this. But I'm working on these. I'm going to get the fourth one done, and then if there's still a little time left, I'm going to do some filling in seams on the body on this. There's some seams that need some filling. I'll put filler in it, and that'll sit for 3 weeks and then be sanded off. This one here. This isn't the worst of the four. It's not great, but it's not as bad as some of them were. Do the insides of that one. Yeah, a little flashing shows on the insides of these struts as well as the outside. Do this one, clean up at the outside, and then the insides of the struts, and then the edges. There's a fly down here, lovely. Decided that my head was a great place to perch. How embarrassing. Maybe more embarrassing for the fly than for me. I don't know. The plan for this is, get all these parts, all these struts cleaned up, basically getting rid of the flashing that shows up on the edges, the seams that the plastic oozed out between the two halves of the mold and left a little raised edge all around the outsides of these struts where it's not supposed to be. So cleaning these up. Filling in the gaps around the edges of the main body of this thing. And like everything else in this model, it's just kind of like just keep at it, and eventually it gets done. So what I really need to do while I'm gone and not streaming is think of things to talk about on stream. Seriously, it's like I've used up all the really good stuff. I've used up talking about the space race and growing up with it and what it was really like and how we had a great time watching the Vanguard rockets blow up before Werner von Braun saved the day by repurposing some Army rockets, some intermediate range ballistic missiles, basically to send the first satellites into orbit. And that was all fun. Talking about TV and who was more powerful, Samantha or Ginny. Who cares? Talking about Yogi Berra. Talked about the devastation that solid state circuitry played on the vacuum tube industry. I mean, transistors were, terrific things, right? Made sorts of things possible, like transistor radios, little portable radios that were a really cool thing to have in 6th and 7th grade. I got a transistor radio. The sound quality was terrible, but you could play music and carry it around with you, and you could show it off to your friends, and you could say, mine has 7 transistors, and they'd say, oh, well, mine's got 8. So it's got to be better because it's had more transistors, even though it sounded just as bad when you played music on it as the other ones, because the speakers weren't very good. I mean, that was the real problem with it. But, that just totally obliterated the vacuum tube industry and all the people who made a living at it. Tube testers, the machines that you use to test the tubes usually at the pharmacies. The pharmacies all had tube testers, so you didn't have to call a repair person. It was it was the equivalent of a pump it yourself gas station, right? So instead of having to call somebody to come to your house to test your tubes with their portable tube tester, you could take your tubes to the pharmacy and plug them in, and it would tell you whether they were good or not. And if not, you could buy replacements right there. They had big racks of all sorts of tubes, and usually they had one that would match the one that you needed. And then you'd go back and hope that you remembered which ones plugged in where, because, if they weren't plugged into the right place, then it didn't matter if they were working or not. But that was a thing. Usually each of them, they were different sizes and had different pin structures. So they were kind of like no two alike kind of situation, really, with tubes. So usually, you were able to get them back in the right place after you found out the one that wasn't working and you bought a new one at the pharmacy. But I talked about how transistors just destroyed that. It was kind of a fun thing to do. It's like, let's test the TV isn't working. So you'd open up the TV. You could do it back then without voiding the warranty. There were warnings because it's like, make sure you unplug it first, which was actually pretty important because there were some pretty powerful capacitors in some of those TVs. I think there might still be, but I mean, not like that. I mean, these were like fingernail-sized capacitors, big ones, and they could throw you across the room if you touched them wrong while they were charged. So it was like not only unplug the TV, but after you unplug it, you got to wait for a while so that the capacitors had a chance to discharge. Otherwise, they'd discharge on you, which would be a very unpleasant experience. Anyway, we all got brave. And instead of calling the TV repair person who made house calls, because that was the thing then, I mean, you could take a TV into the shop, but TVs then, especially the bigger ones, they were, it took two people to carry them. So you'd save a service call, but it was pretty inconvenient. Anyway, yeah, vacuum tubes. Usually, you'd have a pretty good idea of which ones were working or not working because they had this warm orange glow. The emitter, the electron emitter would glow orange. You could look inside the TV and see which ones were glowing or not glowing. And if they weren't glowing, then you could reasonably suspect that maybe that tube had burned out. And that's what they did. They burned out. The emitters stopped emitting because whatever they were emitting was done. Or perhaps the vacuum seal on the tube itself failed, and air got in and that would oxidize the components on the inside. And just, like a light bulb filament in the old incandescent bulbs, it would just burn. It would oxidize and break. But then, if we suspected it was a particular tube was burned out, we could pluck it out after very carefully unplugging the TV and waiting for the capacitors to discharge. And we'd take it to the pharmacy and put it in the tube tester and buy a replacement and plug it in, and hopefully then the TV would work again. But sometimes other things broke. These were not integrated circuits. Every component, every resistor, every capacitor, every inverter, the dial for the station and adjustment and everything else, those were all mechanical, analog and mechanical. So sometimes those broke. The contacts would wear out, or an internal component like the shaft, it would just break off the shaft or something. So those kinds of things would happen with old TVs. Not that the TVs were old at the time, the TVs were new, but the old cathode ray tube televisions. But yeah, sometimes sometimes it would be like, or it could be like a resistor that was attached to one of the circuit boards, just sort of the solder joint might break, or a capacitor might fail, and then you have to have somebody come out and take a look at it, and then you'd hear the dreaded words, "I have to take it into the shop," which means that it couldn't be tested and fixed right there. It wasn't a simple fix, and so your TV would have to go into the shop. Sometimes TV repair places, just like car repair places, you could get a loaner. And it wouldn't be a very good television. Maybe, the picture quality might not be very good. It might be small. So you lose your 23-inch diagonal gigantic console TV and get it replaced by a 12-inch diagonal portable TV that made a weird humming noise the entire time it was on. But at least you had it so that you wouldn't miss Bonanza or the Disney show or whatever it is while your TV was in the shop. And then it could take a long time to troubleshoot something, like if a capacitor were burned out and had to be replaced. And that could all be done, but would have to track it down and find it first. Now, if something goes wrong, odds are that it would cost more to repair it, even if one could find out what the problem was, than just hopefully recycling it. Please recycle your electronics. But hopefully recycling it and getting a new one. Back in the day, the worst news, I mean, even worse than I need to take it into the shop, is your picture tube is shot. And it was possible to replace the gigantic cathode ray tube, that ended up weighing like 30 pounds or whatever. They were really heavy beasts. I mean, those could go too, because they were emitting electrons, and the emitter could fail, or some of the electronics that steered the electron beam could fail. And then you had a choice of either replacing the picture tube, which, technically wasn't that difficult. You just pull the old one out. It's not that simple. Pretty much just pulled the old one out and stuck a new one in and attached a couple of things. Or buying a new TV. And if your TV wasn't too old, you actually could get a picture tube and replace it for less than like half the cost of a new television. And sometimes that was done. And sometimes it was, that was getting old anyway. I guess it lived out its useful life. It lasted like 3 years or whatever. They've got these new ones now that are a lot bigger. And the pictures weren't quite as fuzzy. Anyway, I got to talk about old televisions and television repair. That was something. Okay. So this one, say, is done. So I'm just going to move the sandpaper over. These are like 4 each of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different kinds of little struts that hold the lunar excursion module up. And when it's done, it's supposed to do that. All those little struts are supposed to come together, and they fold up underneath it like this so that it fits inside this fairing, and then they unfold, and supposedly are strong enough to hold not only this, but the entire assembly of the descent and ascent stage of the lunar module. So I've got most of these done. I have to get the long one yet. This long one, they're still attached to the trees, and I won't mess with that until I get back from my next trip. I'm going to push these aside in order to make room to put this back in here. Okay. But before I put that back in there, I'm going to fill in some of the seams on this, so that when I get back, I can sand it down and maybe get it ready for priming. It'll be, yeah, I won't say it. I won't say ready for prime time. Nope, not going to fall for that. So you didn't hear that. Just getting a toothpick. The filling in process has never worked as well as I hoped it would. I'm ending up using spackling compound, stuff that's designed for walls, because the stuff that's designed for plastic models doesn't work. It dissolves the plastic around it, and then it doesn't harden hard enough to sand. The stuff I've got, it ends up too soft and gummy. And when I tried to sand it, it just pulls right out. So this stuff, although imperfect, it works a little bit better than that. I tried auto body putty. Auto body putty actually hardens really nicely. It's designed to do that. It hardens really well and can be sanded. And I would like to use that, but what happens is that it dissolves the plastic around it also, and then it just leaves scars on the plastic. So this at least doesn't create more problems than it solves. That's about what I can say about it. Is that it doesn't make it worse. Doesn't always make it better, at least not as much better as I would hope it would. But it doesn't cause additional problems by like dissolving the plastic and creating big flaws and things like that. I know I'm missing something. Be going around all of this and resanding it anyway. More problems with this. No, I'm not finding them now. It's weird. Yeah, this stuff goes on pink. It goes on pink and then it dries white. So I can see where I'm putting it anyway. when I get back, I'll be resanding this, and then I will do a big batch of priming with this thing and with all the little parts that are in the parts box that you saw just a bit ago. Okay. Be priming all of that. And then after it's primed, I'll take a look at them again. These had a real problem. Let's see if I can find it again. It's right here. I guess I didn't turn it the right way, but this whole seam kind of has a gap in it. Anyway, yeah. So I'll be doing more sanding, test fitting, priming, resanding, priming, painting, and then hopefully assembly. At least I don't have any issues like windows that might fall out or something like that with this. The biggest issue is whether or not these struts will hold up and whether they'll fold the way they're supposed to. If they do, that would be great. If not, I'm not sure what I'll have to do in terms of like reinforcing them or something. Okay, well, this doesn't seem to be too bad. This is just now trash. I'll get to throw that away. Okay, there we go. Thank everybody for joining in today. I really appreciate it. Those of you who are in chat, thanks so much for that. That really helps make the stream better when there's chatting going on. I will be back, like I said, I believe on the 14th of August, at which time I will continue working on these parts to the descent stage, the going down stage of the lunar module. I need to take these off, recheck all of these before I prime them, and then prime them, fit them, and hopefully if they'll work, I'll paint everything gold, wrap this in gold foil, probably wrap this in gold foil first, and then put the struts together. Yeah, I'm looking forward to making that work. And in terms of the instruction sheets, I'll just show you what I'm doing. This is the part that I was just sanding. Okay, this has just been assembled. So it looks like this, except I'm not putting the nozzle on until it's painted, because it's painted a different color than everything else. And then these snap on. Okay. Oh, yeah. I can't forget the ladder and the little platform. These actually get painted silver, a dark silver color. Yep. So, yeah, these all are supposed to like snap together, other than the ladder. The ladder gets cemented onto this particular strut, but none of the rest of this gets cemented except the very, very bottom here. And then they're supposed to fold up somehow. I'm not sure how that's going to work. And the final assembly is to attach the landing pads and the platform on the top. If we get to that point eventually, that'll be really great, because that'll mean that it's that the lunar module will be done. Okay, this beastie here is the next thing to be finished. That should be pretty cool. And then I'm going to go back then to the command module. And this is the part that I'm not happy about, is that the detail on the control panel is very, very shallow. I mean, you can see that there's lines here. Those lines are barely visible on the actual plastic part. So I want to spend some time trying to paint some detail onto the control panels, because once it's put together, okay, once it's assembled and the astronauts are stuck in there along with this section of the control panel, then the hatch and the windows, the hatch opens. It rotates open. You can see in through it, like right across. And if you were to hold it at the right angle, you'd be able to see the whole control panel. And if that's just painted like light blue without any detail on it, it will look kind of crappy, really. And then there's other parts that go onto it. These are where the parachutes sit. And then this is the docking module that connects the top of the command module to the lunar module after this little cone goes off. You can pretend to do the entire Apollo mission and attach it there. So, yeah, there's that. Anyway, there's stuff that needs to be done before I get to that point, but I wanted to show you where I was at. Thanks, everybody, for watching. I apologize for the late start today because of the internet outage. I will not be here Friday and the 2 weeks after that, but I'll be back on, I believe it's August 14th, and I'll continue working then on the Apollo model. Thanks again. I appreciate it. Have a good day.